as in any good story, it carries the thread from whence it came. And this story was handed to me, this thread was handed to me in a moment of clarity that one might call epiphany. And I was pretty young, I was in my 20s, and the project I was working on, based on the ideas of the many people that are now being recognized for their work, Buckminster Fuller, Gregory Bateson, and all the people that were thinking about the newness of expanded consciousness in the 70s and what we had learned through the 60s, and that if we applied that to humanity and our understanding of our presence on the planet, that all would be well. And I had a view further behind that curtain when the technologies of networking were starting to emerge in the late 70s. And I had the opportunity to work on projects for some major corporations on their needing to bring together their people from all around the world for their annual meetings to test something that soon became email. And to then also work with the people that were creating technologies to test something that soon would be known as networking. And so I was engaged in designing and implementing projects that was, in essence, expanding human consciousness and connecting us in ways that had never happened before. And who I am and what I was doing at the time as a designer and a thinker and a curiosity young kid led me to places that cracked open this epiphany. And I was gifted the story of the Eleprocons. And that story comes from the notion that humanity has been trying to understand their presence and place, and our simple senses led us to a notion of duality. And our fight or flight brain, as it evolved, held on to that quite strongly. And that sense of duality, through many years of interacting with the world around us, led us to being able to extend our senses and tune in to what was going on around us more deeply than our simple senses could. And at the same time, our presence and like sense of body and corporal, like we were an interbeing, we were connected in a way that we couldn't explain, but we knew how to be present in it. And then we started naming it, calling it things, scientificing it, religiousing it, clarifying it. And we ended up to a place where we could finally call out and say, oh my God, if we look deep enough, and we could say everything was made of, electrons and protons, that duality. We named it that way, and we worked with it for quite a while. We dug ourselves into the culture that we now have that is based on that. And somewhere along the line, that's always been there, we've outed this notion of consciousness. And when we brought that into play, and we went beyond the simple senses and the simple duality of electrons and protons and added consciousness, you had Eleprocon. What might you ask is an Eleprocon? Coming from an ancient fairy tale, the last fairy tale, the one that we've come from. That, if you can find that little creature, that trickster, will tell you where the treasure is. Eleprocon, Eleprocon, tell me an age-old secret. Eleprocon, Eleprocon, where do you hide and keep it? You started with a word, this I have heard, and now I intend to seek it. Eleprocon, electrons, protons, and consciousness. Wait, electing between the pro and the con. This is how we've gotten here today, to become Eleprocons, to move past the simple notion of duality, to understand consciousness is a foundational component of our reality. We cannot be objective. We are part of it. And once we realize that, and we connect in ways that we could have never imagined before, as we can with the new technologies that provide us, you and me, right at this very moment, to connect in this way, this ability leads to a fascinating equation. And as evolution goes, we go from one to the next. You had Einstein with a physical equation, E equals mc squared. Oh, what comes after 2? 3. When you get to 3, it's exponential. It becomes infinite. So let's land on E equals mc to the infinite power. Evolution equals mind times omnidirectional communication. The idea that we can actually do this now between you and I, here and now. It's recorded. Leah, hi. You'll be sitting in and watching this. So we're communicating with the future. Leah is now communicating with the past. We're communicating with the planet. We're understanding what the oceans are about. We're understanding what our children are about. We're understanding what's being left to them and the complications that we've created. We've tuned in. Our senses are much, much more advanced than they ever were. And yet, at the same time, we're trying to regain that sensibility of being attuned to the planet without all this technology. What's that all about? That's what we're here to discover as Eleprocons. The evolution of humanity. That's the story that was gifted to me that I wasn't quite sure what to do with when it landed in my lap 40 some odd years ago. And I've been holding on to that thread for a very long time, wondering what to do about it. That living my story, that accepting it, and in the last 5 years of once my children became more independent and I could step out and regain the grasp of that story and go explore where it's connected to in various ways. That's the thread I'm holding on to that's led me to sit here with you at this very moment and be engaged in a project called The More Beautiful World Our Hearts Know is Possible, that is about the sense of story, the sense of place, and the sense of community. And that's been my journey to just learn what's going on in the world, because I've been checking in over the years. What's happening? If I knew that I was gifted this, like this little peek into the future to say the leprechauns are coming, the leprechauns are coming. Keep an eye out for them. Here's what you can expect they might be. Here's the ideal. And somewhere along the line, of course, we've been co-opted. We see what's happening with fake news and media, but all that is part of the lesson. The evolution of us growing as a culture that's now connected in such a way to each other and the planet that we have capabilities to evolve in a way that we never imagined. And that's the hope I hold forth and the work of my future as I step out. That's my gift. That's what I can do now. That's why I'm here. That's my story.